Okay, so to go over just some other ideas that you guys are going to run into as you're working on this, I want to go back and show you another way of separating your bowl, because you are going to need to put things inside of your bowl. So last time I showed you a way of vectorizing the bowl and then getting rid of part of it. That may not be an option, so I'm going to demonstrate another way to do this. But first, let me get this bowl here ready to work with. It of course has a rendered effect on it to give it a 3D form, but I want to open it up a little bit, tilt the bowl a little bit. So I'm going to go here in the appearance palette to my 3D revolve, going to reselect preview, and also be aware again, if you want to add other colors, if you want to reposition your light source, it can make a big difference on how the bowl looks. So do toy around with that a little bit, but mostly just so you're able to put your signature cereal shapes inside of this. I'm going to tilt this a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and render this thing. So okay, but before I do that, I always make a copy so I don't have to redo all that work in case I mess up. So now that I've got that in the position that I want, I'm going to go ahead and flatten it, expand its appearance. That's an object command, object, expand appearance. And last time I showed you how I basically just use the hollow selection tool to select those areas to get rid of them. So we could have that front face for those objects to look like they're actually in the bowl. But this time I'm going to show you a different way of doing this. To do this other way, now that I've actually vectorized this object, I need to actually re-rasterize it. So to do that, that's going to be an object command again. So I go to object and then rasterized. And I'm actually setting this up so I can make a clipping mask of this object. So when I go to this rasterize mode, I've got a couple of options. One of the options you should choose is when it does this rasterization is that it does not put a white box around the object that you make. You actually want to preserve the transparency. So I'm going to select transparency. Resolution at 300 is good, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. And that just basically turns it back into a graphic. It's no longer a vector object. So to do this technique, I'll need a copy of it. So I'm going to make a copy, put that over there. And then I'm going to make a clipping mask of the front of this bowl. And I'm just going to do that real quickly with my pen tool. And basically I'm going to try to, and this may end up being a little crude, try to separate the interior part of this from the front face of the bowl. And then I'm going to make a complete shape, go back to my starting point. And what I'm going to try to do is now select both that vector shape and also my cereal bowl. So to select another shape with that one shape already selected, hold down my shift button, click the cereal bowl, and we'll see if this works. It may not work because I went outside the edges of that original shape, but we'll see what happens. So to make a clipping mask, I just right-clicked on both those two objects, make clipping mask, and it did the reverse of what I need. I went the wrong way. So Control-Z to undo that. Let me redraw my shape. Alright, I'll pick up right there. I'll continue. Yeah, I went the wrong direction. Alright, so now I've got the inverse part of this bowl selected. Same thing, hold down Shift, select both the bowl and the vector shape that I drew, then make clipping mask, and that's actually what I'm looking for. Now I have a front face to put in front of the bowl, and now if this object is in front of the other, now I'll be able to put objects inside of that, and it'll have the idea of that captured space. So that's one thing I want to show you guys today. Something else, when you are making your serial title, I do want you to use an extruded 3D form for that. But, of course, same deal. You can, adjust the light on the object, so you can really control what's dark and what's lighter, what's getting the most amount of light. You can change the color of the light. But something else I like to do to make the word form a little bit more customized is after you have flattened it, went to Object and expanded its appearance, you get a lot of that look right there. If I look in outline mode, I really can see all the vectors there. But if you still want it to go, whoops, wrong key. If you still want it to customize it a little bit more, you can go with your hollow selection tool and you can get all of these front faces of the objects. And I want to show you a couple of stylizations that you can do both on your text elements and on your character that can help to give your forms a little bit more of a 3D look, a more natural look. Right now, all of these just have flat applications of color. And of course, that flat application is going to look flat. But if you want it to look like it has a little bit more form, you can do if you go to the effects palette, then go down to stylize. The one I would suggest you work with is for this effect is inner glow. Whenever you start to try to utilize the inner glow, always hit preview. Inner glow always starts on the edge, but you can also render it from the center for a more even application. And this looks good especially on your characters. It gives a sense of roundness to their forms, instead of it just being a flat application of color. And of course, you'll just have to sort of tool around with the blur and also the opacity. Right now, this is just a white application of color that it's doing with the glow, but you can switch, anything in the spectrum to maybe what you're working with your color model for your character in Serial Box. But that's very useful, again, especially on making your character look like it's not sort of flat. For example, if I were to, on this character, firstly just give him a single color, and then that's what the single color looks like. And since again it's just a flat, uniform color application, he looks flat. So to give it a little bit more form, I can go into Effect, Stylize, Inner Glow, hit Preview. Blue on blue is not going to show up real well. So you do need some value contrast between the two colors that you are trying to utilize. And again, you can either do that from the edges where it generates that effect, or you can do it from the center. And that's going to cause some variation on what it produces, so you will need to adjust either the blur or the opacity to get a look that looks good to you. But definitely do either one or the two on the characters. It just makes a more, I think, naturalistic looking character. You can also try outer glows. They work good if you have colored backgrounds. They're real subtle, but it is real useful for giving a real nice polished look to your character. A couple of notes about your actual serial objects. Make sure, again, when you start to drop your serial objects into your bowl, that you flatten all of them. This is so complex, you need to simplify this so it helps with the rendering on the computer. Because, ideally you're not just going to have 4 pieces of lonely cereal floating in the milk. You're going to have a bunch and a variety in there, so that's going to be a lot of them. So this object here, if I wanted to try to get it ready, I would need to first, again, I need to rasterize it. That rasterization is going to simplify it. You know, rather than it being all these vector pathways for the computer to consider, you know, I'm just going to simplify it into one simple raster PNG object. And again, keep the transparency, of course. So I'm going to OK that. And then once I have that one simple object, I can start to do variations on it. If I copy that, and let's say I'm going to do, you know, a series of a green one, a red one, a blue one, or what have you. You know, at that point, if I want to do some color variations, I can go back to Effects, Stylize, and do the Inner Glow, and choose another color to give these a little bit of color variation. Once you get those going, let me do a 2-color spray brush application of these. Show you how you can use your spray can to actually make a lot of these real quickly. But first, let me make this one a different color. Inner Glow. Let's just put some red on that one. Preview. Let's do it from the... maybe blue. The red's not really showing up very well. Yeah. So normal in terms of your blending mode looks to work better. So, but you will have to just tool around with it to get the effect that looks right. And also, I think Edge seems to work better too for just recoloring these. But let's say I'm just going to try to get these two objects and I want to replicate them a whole lot. What I'm going to do is drop them in my Symbols palette. Did you know you had a Symbols palette? Your Symbols palette is under the club symbol. And what I'm going to do is just drag both of these and drop them into my Symbols palette. And think as a graphic. Let's try that. Okay, and then once I've dropped them in there, what I'm going to do is get my spray can here, and I can start spraying them. And it looks like a complex object, but the computer actually thinks of it as one object. And for whatever reason, it's rooted with those original objects right there. So bear that in mind when you start spraying those all around. But the spray can, if you double click on the spray can icon, you can get all of the variables that you can use to adjust how many, how far apart they're spread, blah 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 blah. How it mixes them in terms of color. But again, that's a way to get a high density of objects. But it does actually also help. If you flatten those objects, turn them into PNGs. Don't try to drop a complex object. I dare you. I dare you to drop one of these into the Symbols palette and then try to spray a bunch of them. See what your workstation does. I mean, you better save your working document first if you want to try it, because it matters. The computer will lurch up. But that's one way you guys can get a density of, and you can drop, like I dropped 2 objects in there, you can drop 5 objects if you go ahead and make them variable objects. And that way, real quickly you can, get a whole bunch of objects that you fit into your cereal bowl.